Honk, honk. There's a train outside. It doesn't do anything but go honk, honk. It's really annoying me. Hello, everyone. My name is Stonsey Boy, and welcome back to Reading with Stonsey. Today, we're reading pages 141 to 160. Should you be surprised? You really shouldn't be. It's been a full night since I last read my book. So, we're gonna read this, have a few breaks in between, and I think after this, I'll go to work. What time is it? Hold on. Yeah, we're gonna get a few done today, and that's gonna be beautiful. So, without further ado, let's begin. Then what do you think he's doing? Besides cheating on my mother? Point. He takes another deep breath. I think he comes to you all for sex. And if he is, he's cheating on my mother, which would be your mother's concern, not yours. He's my father, not your spouse. Why aren't you giving me a direct answer? Why are you asking me instead of him? Because I'm not sure I could trust what he says, he blushed, like questioning the word of father is somehow shameful. And if you think you can trust me, all the others do. He gestured took the whole of the garden. The handful of girls allowed out of the rooms when Desmond was there. But all the walls were down, and the girls who suck up the hopes of release their second sets of wings displayed on their faces. They were down on the weepers and listless, and except for Bliss, the chronically bitchy, they were down over all dozens of girls in the glass, scattering of empty cases that weren't enough to hold the current generations, and no one knew what he was going to do when he ran out. You're one of us, I said flatly, because of who you are, what you are. You'll never will be. Because I'm privileged? More than you can ever fathom. They trust me because I've proven them they can. I have no interest in proving that to you. What do you think his reaction would be if I asked him? I don't know, but he's coming up the path, and I thank you not to ask him in front of me. It ain't easy to ask him for anything, he murmured. I knew that's why the truth for us. I thought it would cowardice that was apparently true for him. His father rejoined us then, standing over us with a smile. Getting along well, Desmond? Yes, sir. Maya's very pleasant to talk with. I'm glad to hear it. His hand twitches and touched my hair. That at least second, he brought it up to rub his jaw. It's time for us to join your mother for dinner. I'll check in with you later, Maya. Of course. Desmond stood and brought my knuckles to his hips. Seriously? Thank you for your company. Of course, I repeated. I watched them make their back to the garden, though soon they'd be sitting down in the dining room with Eleanor and Avery. A perfectly normal family conversing over a meal. Never mind the lies that hovered over the table like fog. A few minutes later, I heard Bliss come up beside me. What a tool, she snorted. Maybe. Will he go to the police? No, I said reluctantly. I don't think he will. Then he's a tool. Sometimes I was hard to argue with Bliss's logic. It was just such as it was. But sometimes tools could be used. Why didn't you think he'd go to the police? For the same reason he wasn't going to ask his father those important questions. He answers with a shrug. Because he was scared. What if we went to the police with the father's explanation was actually true? Or worse, what if it wasn't? Maybe if he wanted to do the right thing, but he was barely 21. How many of us do the right thing at that age? You hadn't even reached that age yet, Edison points out, and the girl nods. And I don't claim to know the right thing. He wanted to believe his father, and I've never had anyone I wanted to believe that badly. I never felt the kind of need for someone to be proud of me. He smiled suddenly, soft and sour and slightly sad. Lot worried about that, though. Lot? Sophia's younger girl. I remember one time, after we'd work until 3 in the morning, Sophia was with the girls' school at 8:30 in the morning, so she could see her class plays. He told us about it after she'd gotten a nap in. A smile spreads, deepens, and for a moment Victor sees the real Inara Morisi, the girl who found the home in the strange apartment. Jill was fearless, confident, and the kind of kid who would throw herself into anything, no hesitation. Lot was not. Girls like the older sisters, like Jilly, probably never are. Anyway, we were around a coffee table, sitting on the floor to eat crazy assortment of food from Takis and Sophia's were too tired, bothered to getting dressed. She just pads over in her underwear, her hair covering most of her ink and not much of her tits, and plops down to eat. La had been fretting about her line for weeks, practicing it over and over with each of us when we didn't have a mother with her mother to visit, and we all wanted to know if she'd remembered it. Victor in those class plays, did she? Half of it. Jilly shouted at the rest of them in the audience. The smile shift fades. I've never been an ambitious person. I never really saw a point to it. Those girls, though, they had each other and Sophia. They were worth envying. Inara, you would get anything from Takis? He interrupts briskly. flicking her burned and sliced fingers as if to dismiss sentimentality. It was between the station and our building, never closed, and he'd make anything, even if he brought the stuff to the bodega next door. Working in the restaurant, none of us ever wanted to cook. The moment he could have pushed it is gone as quickly as it came, but he makes a mental note of it. He's not naive enough to think he trusts him. Still, he doesn't think it means to reveal this as much emotion. Whatever she's hiding, she agrees with Edison. She's trying to hide something important. She's so focused on the other thing, she's starting to slip. He likes Anara, and he likes his daughter every time he looks at her, and he likes the job to do. In the garden? He asked neutrally. You think mention Lorraine and orders to make only healthy food? He makes a face. Cafeteria style. You stood in line, received your meal, and sat down at the tables, complete with benches to make you feel like you're back in grade school. Unless you wanted to take the tray back to your room, which you could pretty much do whenever you felt like, as long as you brought it back for the next meal. What if you didn't like what was being served? You ate what you could off the plate. And if there was actual allergy involved, was forgiveness. And if you didn't eat enough or we were too picky, things didn't end well for you. There was a set of twins where I first arrived. They looked identical, right down to the wings tattooed on their back. But they were very, very different people. Mandolin and Mandolina. Maggie, the elder of the by several minutes, was allergic to life. Seriously, she couldn't even go out to the main garden because she couldn't breathe out there. If you ever needed help falling asleep, all you had to do was ask her to list her food allergies. Lena, on the other hand, wasn't allergic to anything. In one of his rare lapses into insensitivity, the gardener kept them in the same room and always visited them at the same time. Lena liked to run around the garden, often as it not ended up soaked in muddy and covered in plant bits. This created a rather large problem when she tried to go back to her room to shower. Even if Maggie was in the dining room, she'd come back later and find a shred of grass on the floor and freak the fuck out. Maggie was allergic to the first 20 or so soaps the gardener provided, and even then she would complain about how dry her skin was, how lank her hair was, and always how she couldn't breathe and why her eyes were so blurry. None of us had any sympathy for her. Oh, holy fuck. Maggie was used to her parents falling over themselves to make her comfortable at every step. I liked Lena, though. Lena never complained, even when Maggie was at her most annoying. She explored the garden just as much as I did. Sometimes the gardener even hid little treasures for her to find, simply because he knew she would. She loved to laugh and seized on any excuse to do so, creating one of those relentlessly cheerful outlooks that would be irritating if you didn't know she knew the gravity of the situation. She chose to be happy because she didn't like being sad or pissed off. She tried to explain it to me. I sort of got it, but not really, because, let's face it, I'm not that person. I don't choose to be sad or pissed off, but I don't exactly choose to be happy either. Maggie never ate with the rest of us because she said just being in the same room with the things would make her have a severe reaction. Her sister nearly always had to take her to tray specifically prepared food, then swing by to pick it up before the next meal. But then Lena had the time for that, because you didn't put any meal before her and she'd suck it down under 5 minutes. Lena would eat everything without a complaint. And Lena was one of the very few people in the garden I genuinely feared for, because most of us understood the gardener kept the twins as a pair and all other things. He would in death as well. They'd been here for 6 months when I got there, and with the lionette running fearful interference between Maggie and the rest of our little world, unfortunately the gardener seemed to be more amused than anything else with Maggie's need for special attention. At least, until he wasn't. I was there and the change began, and there was no more lionette to run interference. Every so often, the gardener felt a surge to dine with us unmasked, like a king in his court, or as Bliss put it, a sultan in his harem. Had Lorraine inform us all during breakfast that he'd be there for dinner that night. I suppose that we would make extra effort with our appearances. That afternoon found me in Danielle's room with a bowl of water in my lap so I could carefully re-wet her hair each time I needed to run the brush through it. She sat in front of me on the bed, twinning ribbons through sections of Evita's hair before she twisted them up into a mass in the black and blonde head. For Danielle, they braided small sections of her hair to drape between two high buns, and others to fall down her back. They were too thin and obscured her wings, but they were small to defiance. Haley sat behind me doing something with brush and pins, while Simone stood behind her with ribbons and twists and oil. I never gone to the school dance, but I might have looked like we were preparing for something like that. Something fun and wonderful. Something to look forward to, and at the end of the evening you'd have a whole set of memories to cherish. Not so much here in the garden. With the presence of the water and a chance for spilling, none of us were wearing more than underwear. No one was giggling or chattering like girls off in the dance probably would be. Lena walked in, still dripping in the shower, or a dip in the pond, knowing her, and dropped on the floor. She says she's not going. She's going, Danielle, and I finished the last braid and set a drop against her back. She says she's not. We'll take care of it. She spat it into the back of Evita's head and slid off the bed of the brush. Stood up. She sank on her knees behind Lena, who promptly obeyed. It should have been the end of it, especially once Danielle got into Maggie's room, but the rest of us are dressed and gathered in the hallway. we could hear them arguing, something chattering against the wall, and a minute later, a pink-cheeked Danielle stalked out. Only parts of the handprint showed the red and purple wings. She's getting dressed. Let's go. The gardener wasn't yet in the dining room when we arrived. 2 by 2, like Mando or their classmates, Danielle and I hung back with the others to enter, twitching dresses to hang directly, fixing a pin here or there, and they're all in and seated. I leaned against the wall. Is she actually getting dressed? He rolled her eyes. God, I hope so. I think I'll make sure of that. Maya, she stopped and shook her head. Never mind. Go ahead. You do you. Danielle was shaking off her post, stuck up apathy in order to help me after Lionette went into class. I hadn't figured out how to tell her how grateful I was. Maggie wasn't dressed. As a matter of fact, she was quite busy trying to stuff all of her clothing, which she shared with her twin, down the toilet. She flinched when I heard my throat from the doorway. When panted exertion, I finally met my eye. She came with a dark blonde hair and a dark gardener and Avery currently with a mess about her face. With her hazel eyes and strong nose, she could easily have passed for his daughter, which, ew. I'm not going. Yes, you are, because you're endangering your sister. And she doesn't endanger me every time she waltzes in with things that could kill me clinging all over, she demanded. Allergies are not the same as pissing off the gardener, and you know it. I'm not going. I'm not. I slapped her. It made a ringing sound in a small room, and the skin immediately pinking up around the impact. She stared at me, tears filling her eyes as she clutched her cheek with one hand. Avery wasn't allowed to touch her because of the allergy, so I doubt she'd ever been slapped before. However quick as she was to do it to others, as long as she was shocked into silliness anyway, I grabbed her hair and pulled her in a knot high above her hair, securing a few spiral pins. I got a good grip on her upper arm, hauled her into the hallway. Come on. I'm not going, she sobbed and scratched my hand and arm. I'm not. If you could have been at least a bit mature, you could have been dressed and calm, and this would have been all over an hour or so. But no, you had to be spoiled little princess about it. Now you can be naked and worked up. You get to explain to the gardener why you would disrespect him in such a way. Just tell him I'm sick. He already knows you aren't, I growled. Lorraine and would have told him, or didn't you think I was strange that she checked on you everyone through the afternoon? It was hours ago. You got all the allergies and Lena got all the brains, I muttered, and blew away a stray hair of my mouth. Madeline, please try not to be a complete idiot. It's one meal. Your food will still be prepped separately, and we'll still sit you down as far in the table away from everyone else's place. Why don't you understand? He tried to kick me, and when that didn't work, he tried to drop off to the ground. I just kept dragging her and after me until the friction on the side made her struggle back into her feet. I could get really sick. I could die. That was it. I turned and slammed her against one of the glass display cases, her head between the open wings of ink. The girl had been there before, Lionette, the one who welcomed Lionette, and none of us knew her name, only that the girl fertility, and what a fucked up thing to know. If you don't join us for dinner, you will die, and so will your sister. You get a fucking clue. She started crying harder, great big heavy sobs and grabs of snot. Disgusted, I sneaked a drip from her arm and got around the corner. Gardner stood in the doorway of the dining room, his arms crossed on the chest and faint frown on his face. Is there a problem, ladies? He asked. I glanced at the naked, sobbing Maggie, a great big hand print across her cheek, as well as the beginnings of what probably would be a charming bruise on her arm where I gripped it. No. I see. Fortunately, he did. He watched all through dinner, sitting at the end of the table between me and Danielle as Maggie picked up her specially prepared plate without eating a single bite. He watched as she refused to enter the conversation or even answer things put directly to her. He watched her roll her glass of ice across her cheek, while Danielle simply pretended her own swollen cheek didn't bother her. Watched how she curled herself into as far as the table would allow her to hide her nakedness. While we sat a little awkwardly over cheesecake and toffee, we cleared his throat and leaned close to me. Was a slap really necessary? Yes, to calm her down. That was calm? I considered the best way to answer it. I didn't want to screw Maggie, Lena, really, over, but I didn't want to get screwed myself. Either. Calmer. All he did was nod, and I looked at Danielle and saw a grim resignation in her eyes. My stomach sank. How long? Edison asked. Another 2 weeks, she murmurs. You know the saying, what's seen has not been unseen. After that evening, he always had his frown, and when he looked at either of the twins, when one of the walls came down 2 days earlier, they were placed immediately right to the dining room. Victor's hands with a stack of the hallway photos. A minute or so later, he hands it back to a different picture on top. Together? In life as in death, she agrees grimly. Side by side in the same case, the twins are positioned closer together and inner hands linked between them. Swamp metal marks? The girl adds a traces over the finger, molted orange and copper wings. One has her head resting against the other's shoulder, her sister's head rests against hers. They never got along that well when they were alive. She takes the stack of photos in the hallway, shifting through them in unreadable expression. After a moment, she starts sorting them through 2 stacks in front of her. When she's done, the one left is far taller. She slides to the far edge of the table, then lays her hand on a shorter stack, fingers laced together. I know these girls, she says quietly. Her face was impossible to decipher. Some of them not very well, but some of them were like pieces of my soul. But I knew them. I knew the names he gave them. And after Lina introduced us to Cassidy Lawrence, introduced us to the part we lived after Lina into the glass, other used the hours before death to introduce us to the names they had before. You know their real names? You didn't think that at some point the butterfly names became real? They're legal names then. Some of them. We could have been notifying their families by now, says Edison. Why didn't you tell us earlier? Because I don't like you, she says bluntly. She yanks the photos out under her hands. The girl cocks an eyebrow. You really believe knowledge brings closure, don't you? He said. You might incredulous or mocking. Victor isn't sure. Maybe it's something else entirely. The families deserve to know what happened. Do they? Yes. Shoving back to the table, Edison starts pacing before a one-way mirror. Some of them have been waiting for decades to get a word of their loved ones. If they can just now that they can finally give up, her eyes track them back and forth from a small room. So you never heard? What? Whoever went missing, you never heard? Victor curses under his breath with a stricken face. Oh, the girl is good. He can admit that. Not that it was hard to irritate Edison, but it really got under his skin. Go see about getting some food delivered, he orders. Take a few minutes. The door slams behind Edison. Who was it? Asks Inara. Do you really think it's any of your business? How much did what you asked me really any of yours? It's not the same, but they both know it. I don't believe the knowledge helps, Inara says after a moment. If my parents are alive, if they're dead, it doesn't change what happened way back then. It stopped hurting a long time ago, as soon as I accepted that they weren't coming back. Your parents chose to leave, he reminds her. None of you chose to be kidnapped. He looks down at the burned hands. I guess I don't see the difference. If one of Sophia's girls were kidnapped, do you think she ever rested until she knew? Nara blinks. But how does it help? To know that they've been dead for years. To know that they were raped and murdered, then violated further in death. Because then they no longer have to wonder. Don't you think the girls in the apartment worried about you? People leave, she says with a shrug. But you would have gone back if you could, he hazards. She doesn't answer. As if her to go back? That she could? She sighs and sighs entirely at his face. He doesn't debate either of them can win. The door smacks against the wall and opens too quickly, and Edison stalks back in. Victor swears under his breath and starts to rise, but Edison shakes his head. Let me go, Vic. I know the line. Crossing that line in college got the FBI interested in hiring him. Crossing it a few times since has gotten him in trouble. Beneath the remnants of the red-faced fury, though, Victor can see calm determination. It's enough for Victor to sit back down, just in case he stays on the edge of his seat. Edison walks around the table and leans over Nara. As you like to say, there's a thing some people are missed. So I'm sorry that you have such a shitty family. I am. No child deserves to grow up the way you do, and I'm sorry no one missed you. But you don't decide for all those other girls no one's missing them. He sets a picture for him on the table. Victor doesn't help but look at the frame holds. This is my sister Faith, says Edison. She disappeared when she was 8. And no, we never heard. You don't know if she's alive or dead. 20 years my family's been searching and waiting word. Even if we found her body, at least we finally know. I'd stop looking at blondes in their late 20s and wondering if one of them is Faith. And if I'm walking by her and I don't know it. My mother could stop updating websites she hopes Faith will stumble across. My father would take a reward of information money he's been saving all these years and fix the house that's falling down around him. He could finally put my sister to rest and let her go. Not knowing is crippling. It would take a long time to get those girls out of the residence, even longer than positive IDs. Too long. You have the chance to give these families peace. You have the chance to let them finally grieve and move on their lives. You have a chance to give these girls back to their families. The little girl in the picture is wearing pink glitter tiara and a Ninja Turtle costume, usually with an eye mask and pea tutu, and holding a Wonder Woman pillowcase in one hand. Much younger Edison holds her other hand, smiling down at her. He's not in a costume, but the girl is grinning back at him, 2 bottom teeth missing. He doesn't seem to care. Anara touches the child's glass-covered smile. She touched Lionette's photo that way. He took pictures of us, she said eventually. Front and back. One of the tattoos were gone, but if he took them, he must have kept them. Not in this garden suite. I looked once, but Lionette thought he probably put them in some kind of book. He keeps them company when he had to go away from the garden. She studies the photo another moment, hands framed back to them. Lot was nearly 8. I'll call CSU, Edison yells Victor. Have them check the house again. He carefully tucks the frame under one arm and leaves the room. The silence follows a broken, Nara's soft snort. I still don't like him. You're allowed, Victor says with a laugh. Didn't Desmond ever see his book? She shrugs. If he did, he never mentioned it. But some point he discovered the true nature of the garden? At some point. The first time Desmond used new codes was after midnight on a Thursday. Well, technically Friday. It was a week or so after his father finally programmed him into the security system. A week of visiting only with his father, of not asking questions even when his father had walked away. 3 weeks now he'd known of the garden, but not the real one. I'd spent most of the day secluded in Simone's room, helping her with old cloths and a glass of water. She suffered through constant nausea and vomiting. It was the 3rd day in the row where we thus far managed to keep it from Lorraine, but I wasn't sure how long that could last. Between the nausea and some specific points of tenderness, I had a bad feeling Simone was pregnant. I bet happening sometimes, because no contraception was a completely full truth. But it always meant another filled display case and temporary empty room. Don't think Simone had realized her condition yet. She thought Avery had the flu back in the garden. She was finally asleep, one hand pressed against her stomach, and Daniel had promised to stay with her until the morning. The smell of sour, stale vomit clung to me, strong enough to make me semi-nauseated as well. It long since earned the privilege of turning my shower on whenever I wanted, but the idea of being stuck in another little room was almost physically painful. I stopped by the room just long enough to shove my dress and underwear down the laundry chute, far too narrow for a person to fit through, as Bliss had informed me, and went out into the garden itself. At night, the garden was a piece of the shadows and the moonlight, where you could more clearly hear all the illusions that went into making what it was. During the day, there was conversation and movement, sometimes games or songs, and a massive sound of the pipes feeding water and the nutrients through the beds. If the fans that circulated the air at night, the creature was the garden, peeled back its synthetic skin to show the skeleton beneath. I like the garden at night for some reason. I love the original fairy tales that what it was, nothing more, nothing less. Unless the gardener was visiting you, darkness in the garden was closest we got to truth. I stepped through the echoing cave into the falls, letting the water pour over me and wash away the sourness and sickness and coming death. It was strong enough to beat that muscle sore and tired from 3 days of bending over someone, of perching on an uncomfortable stool and accepting every second of Lorraine or the gardener to come to investigate. I let the water pound out of the way, then used the mist-dampening rocks to haul myself up to the top of the cliff, then the sun rock, wrung most of the water from my hair and laid back with closed eyes, followed intelligently over the rock as trace, sun warmth left over the day. Breath by breath, I could feel my muscles slowly relax. Direct, but not very modest. I sat up so fast something seized my back. I spent the next several minutes swearing at people who couldn't give proper warning. Desmond stood in the path 5 or 10 yards away, hands shoved deep in his pockets, craning his neck to stare at the glass tiles of the greenhouse roof. "Good evening," I said sourly, rearranging myself even more comfortably on the rock. All my clothing was either in my room or waiting to be laundered. There wasn't much point in shrieking and finding something to cover myself with. Come and take in the view. Rather more of the view than I expected. I thought I was alone. Alone? He repeated, meeting my eyes, very careful not looking any lower. In an entire garden full of other girls. Who are all others sleeping or occupying themselves in their rooms? I retorted. Ah, that was the last thing I said for some time. It was sure hell wasn't the job to supply conversation. I turned to stone and looked out onto the garden, watching the surface of the pond ripple and sway, rather water emptied from the stream. Eventually, I heard his footsteps on the stone, and then something dark hovered behind me. When I reached out to touch it, it dropped in my lap. His sweater. The color was hard and determined in the moonlight, maybe burgundy of some sort. It was a school crest sewn into one breast. It smelled like soap and aftershave and cedar. Something warm and masculine and mostly unfamiliar in the garden. I twisted my wet hair into a messy knot atop my head and pulled a sweater. Then everything was covered. He sat next to me on the rock. "I couldn't sleep," he said quietly. "So you came out here? I just can't make sense of this place. Given that it doesn't make sense, that's understandable. So, you're not here by choice?" I sighed and rolled my eyes. "Stop looking for information you have no intention of actually using." "How do you know I won't use it?" "Because you want him to be proud of you," I said sharply. "And you know if you tell anyone about all this, he won't be. Given that, what does it matter whether we're here by choice or not? You must think I'm a despicable excuse for a human being." "I think you have potential to be," I said, looked at his sad, earnest face, and decided to take a risk of pretty much the first time ever coming to the garden. "I also think you have the potential to be better." He was silent for a long time, just a tiny snap, and a minuscule nudge that seemed too big. He could have a parent have so much control over a child. Paternal pride meant more than it was right. "Our choices make us who we are," he said eventually. It wasn't that I call a substantive response. "What choices are you making, Desmond?" "I don't think I'm making any choices right now." "Then you're automatically making the wrong ones." He straightened, mouth open to protest, but I held up my hand. "I'm not making choice is a choice. Neutrally is a concept, not a fact. No one actually gets to live their lives that way." "Seemed to work for Switzerland." "As a nation, maybe. How do you think individuals felt when they learned the truth that their neutrality allowed to transpire? When they learned the camps and gas chambers and experimentation? Do you think they were pleased with their neutrality then? Well, then why don't we just leave?" he demanded. "Rather than judge my father and giving you food and clothing and comfortable shelter, why don't you just go back out of there? You don't really think we have codes, do you?" He deflated, the indignation fading quickly as he flared. "He keeps you locked in? Collectors don't let butterflies fly free. It defeats the purpose." "You could ask." "It wasn't easy to ask him for anything," I said, parroting his words from weeks or so ago. He flinched. He was blind, and he wasn't stupid. That he chose to be ignorant really pissed me off. It shrugged and his sweater dropped in his lap, sliding like a rock. "Thank you for the conversation," I muttered. Walking quickly down the path that sloped to the main level from the far end of the cliff, I could hear him tripping and fumbling after me. "Maya, wait, wait!" His hand closed around my wrist and tugged back, nearly pulling me off my feet. "I'm sorry. You're between me and food. Apologize for that, if you like, and get out of my way." He let go of my wrist but kept following me across the garden. He got first across a small stream and reached down to the study from the other side, something I found both bizarre and charming. The main lights of the dining room and the attached open kitchen were dark, and dim light shone from above the stove, looking for a late-night snack. The light of the larger locked fridge momentarily distracted him. I yanked open the door and a small one, studied the inside. I was genuinely hungry, but being around vomiting people doesn't do much for the appetite. Nothing seemed appealing. "What is that on your back?" I slammed the door shut, blocking out the light, but it was too late. He stepped closer behind me, walking us both over to the oven. In the dim glow of the stove light, he studied the wings in all their exquisite, excruciating detail. Under normal circumstances, I would have mostly forgotten what they looked like. He'd give us mirrors if we asked for them. I never had. Bliss, though, made it a point of showing everyone their wings on a regular basis, so we couldn't forget what we were. Butterflies are short-lived creatures, and that too was part of her reminder. This fingertips brushed against the darker veins of brown against the fawn-colored upper wing, stretching the line sprayed upward into the delicate chevrons. I stood perfectly still despite the goosebumps that crawled down my spine in tentative exploration. He had an ass, but then he was his father's son, I suppose. My eyes closed, my hand scrolling to a fist on my side. His fingers moved lower into my bottom wings in roses and purples. He didn't follow the lines down, but in toward my spine until he ran a thumb up my entire length of my back. Ink ran down the entire of my back. "That's gorgeous," he whispered. "Why a butterfly? Ask your father." Suddenly his hand was trembling against my skin, against the mark of a father's ownership. He didn't move it away, though. "He did this to you?" I didn't answer. "How badly did it hurt?" What hurt most was lying there, letting him do it. I didn't say that. I didn't say that it hurt so fucking badly to see those first lines appear to each girl's back. Didn't say that the skin that was so raw I hadn't slept on my back for weeks. Didn't say I couldn't sleep on my stomach because it made me reminded of his first rape on the tattoo bench. Then he drove himself into me and gave me a new name. I didn't say anything. Does he do this to all of you?" he asked shakily. I nodded. "Oh, God. Run," I screamed silently. "Run and tell the police, or open the doors and let us tell the police ourselves. Just do something, anything other than stand there." But he didn't. He stayed behind me, his hand against the map of ink scars, until the silence came, a living, gasping thing between us. So the one move away, to open the fridge again, and pretend there was anything normal at this moment. I pulled out an orange, swung the door closed with my hip, leaned against the orange, swung the door against my hip, leaned against the part of the counter, and ran perpendicular to the rest. I wasn't quite an island, but it created a waist-high separation between the kitchen and the dining room. Desmond tried to join me there, but his legs gave out, and he slid onto the floor next to my feet. His back against the cabinets, his shoulder brushed against my knee and methodically peeled the orange. I always tried to get it off in one piece, the perfect spiral. So far, I never had. It always broke partway through. Why does he do it? Why do you think? Shit. He brought his knees and hunched over him, his arms across his back of the head. I freed the first wedge and sucked it dry, getting the seeds and the peel as I found them. And the silence grew. When the juice was gone on the wedge, I popped the whole thing in my mouth and chewed. I hope to tease me about how I ate oranges, saying I made boys very uncomfortable. I stuck my tongue out at her and told her boys they didn't have to watch. Desmond certainly wasn't watching anyway. I moved on to the second wedge, and then the third and the fourth. Man, that was such a good description of oranges. Honestly, I almost grabbed one myself. Oh, I haven't had a good orange in a minute. I'll be honest with y'all, I've been fat as of recent. I've been nothing but eat candy. Oy vey. That has not been good for my throat. So, after this little segment, I'm gonna go grab an orange. But today we read pages 141 to 160. Next time we will be reading pages 161 to 180. Like I said, we're really not going to get a difference till like episode 12 and I said it before that episode 13 would have a differentiation. I lied. It's 240 to 260, but whatever. But yeah, I mean, we're coming up to it. We only have, well, counting next episode, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We only have 6 more episodes, which is a lot for our channel sake, but honestly, not that bad. It's not that bad for the audio. It's not bad for the books itself. And yeah, y'all already know what time it is. It's time for Reading Corner of the Day. Doing it up Stonsey's way, Bop. Today we are learning about the Komondor. That is what that says, right? Yes, the Komondor. Remember when I said we should get a mop? That's a whap. That's a wet and puppy. Wet and puppy. Whap, right? I don't know the terminologies of today's youth. Now, this dog is, well, let's just say very silly looking. Just for better of words. Yeah, I mean, just very, very silly little doggy. But before I can make fun of anything, I should learn of its history. Not only does it build my credibility and make me look, it also makes me look smarter in front of my mom, my dad, my sister, my brother, and my, what's something I could pick out of my room? My picture of the spy from Team Fortress 2 saying "Seduce Me" with a pink background drawn by MOG Beep Beep. I still love that photo or that hand-drawn thing, and I have it to this day. Ah. Now, intelligence doesn't necessarily lie in knowing things. It also lies in knowing things and talking to others about it and teaching others. That's why some of the smartest people you ever meet are teachers and doctors, though some teachers and some doctors ain't as smart. Anyone watching the full read of the working group and being like, God, this guy says this a lot? Or do you skip through it? Please, put it in the comment section below of that video and not this one. Put it in the comment section of this video. I will cry violently. Now, the history of the Komondor is that when the Huns came to Hungary, they brought with them the large long-legged Russian Archakar, which came the progenitor of the Komondor per Komondoric. These dogs bore a close resemblance to the Magyar sheep, known as Raka, and the proud dog-like carriage, masses of curly wool, thus the dogs easily intermingled with the sheep and first glance appeared of one of the flock. Greatly valued by the Magyar shepherds, the Komondor were not only allowed to interbreed with other breeds, the earliest documentation of breed dates back to 1555. Although the breed is certain to have existed long before then, the Komondor earned its keep guarding the flocks against marauding animals, so effective that it became calm and claimed it's responsible for wiping out the wolf in Hungary. The Komondor is still used as a guard in the 20th century. The first Komondor came to America in 1933, and the AKC, American Kennel Company, recognized the breed in 1937. World War II almost decimated the breed in Europe, but through the concentrated effort of breeders, the Komondor was saved. Although one of the most impressive dogs to ever grace the show ring, the difficulty of preparing its coat was usually dictated with one of the very finest to be shown. As a result, the Komondor remains an uncommon breed everywhere in its native Hungary. Recent attempts to use the breed as guardian of flocks in the western United States have yielded promising results, attracting the attention of new generation of shepherds. Very cool. So are you a shepherd? And if you are, what's the temperament? Can this dog protect my family as well as my flock? What does it do, Stonsey? Well, the temperament of the Komondor is that it's bred as an independent protector of livestock, and the Komondor is true to its heritage. As an independent thinker, to be stubborn or domineering, it does not meek owners and dominate. Its socialization is essential, is reserved to strangers and possibly aggressive towards strange ones. It's good with other pets and especially livestock. In fact, the happiest is with something or someone to watch over. Although usually calm and quiet, it's utterly fearless and neither arises as the natural guardian is protective of the children and its own family, but it may sometimes misunderstand through the tumble games of visiting children. Now you may be asking, Stonesy, what's the upkeep? How do I keep my Komondor healthy, happy, and stringy? Well, the Komondor needs daily exercise along with long walks or short romps. Swimming is not a good idea because the time it takes the coat to dry, it may be also difficult to keep the coat clean in some areas. This breed does not like the warm weather. It can live outdoors in temperate, cool weather. The Komondor is non-shedding, but not carefree. Its cords must be regularly separated or they will look like flat mats. Oh, God. Yawn. Big yawn there. I almost coughed up my lunch by that yawn. Oy vey. You ever have that? Its coat tends to hold dirt. Bathing is time-consuming and drying takes much time of the day. Care of the coat as non-show dogs is far less extensive. Pets can be clipped, but then lose part of the breed's unique appeal. Note that it may take a dog up to 2 years to age before cords form. Now, if you own a Komondor, please listen thoroughly. If you are a teenager and adult, if you're a child, please shut your ears and go watch, I don't know, Skibidi Toilet. Is that what kids watch nowadays? I really don't know. Because we're going to be talking about the health concerns, major concerns, minor concerns, what they're occasionally seen with, their suggested tests when you take them to the doctor, and their lifespan. Major concerns are CHD and gastrotorsion. Minor concerns are otis externa and hot spots, no dir. They're occasionally seen with intropin. Their suggested tests are for the hips, though I would also suggest personally for the body. The lifespan is 10 to 12 years. No, I don't got kids, Stonsey. I'm a shepherd. So what's their form? What's their function? Pretend you don't see that picture in front of you. Well, the form and function is that the Komondor is a large, muscular dog with plenty of bone and substance. It is slightly longer than tall. Its gait is light and leisurely. Long strides and hallmark coat is doable. Double. Double? Yeah, double, consisting of a dense woolly undercoat and its coarser outer coat that is wavy and curly. The undercoat is trapped in the outer coat that forms strong, felty tassel-like cords. Coat helps protect the dog from the elements as well as the teeth of tough adversaries. It also helps the dog to blend in with its flock. Now, for the final section of today's video is the tier list. 5 is the best, 4 is better, 3 is average, 2 is the worst, and 1 is the worst. Unless it comes to grooming, but let's be honest, we're not going to get that. Energy level, exercise requirements, and playfulness are out of 3. It's pretty average. Affection level is out of 4, so higher than average. Friendliness towards dogs and strangers are out of 1, so not very. Friendliness towards other pets is out of 4, so high up. Ease of training is out of 3, so average. Watchdog and protection ability is out of 5, so that's good. Grooming requirements is out of 3, surprisingly, which is not good at all, but honestly, I thought this would be the first 5 for grooming. Cold tolerance is out of 4, but heat tolerance is out of 2, which again is surprising. I think it would be at a 1. Now, for the healthy weight of a Komondor male, its average is 80 pounds, and a female average is 70. Though it says average, I don't know if it can go higher or lower. Height of a male should be 27.5 inches, and a female 25.5 and up. And because if it was feet, we'd be living in a world of giants. Maybe not speaking of giant, this dog kind of lost its neck. Literally. And it is the dog you'll be learning about in the next episode. So, hope you guys have a super fantastic, wonderful day. Be polite, be efficient. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I do hope you guys are enjoying the audiobooks. I'm enjoying this book a lot. I'm also enjoying this dog breed. Of the different dog breeds. Fox, when I sent Fox that picture of the animal from last episode, he just sent me a heart emoji, which I hate because, you know, some actual talking would be nice. But I know a second he'd just be like, talking, depressing, blah. But, yeah. Hope you guys have a super fantastic, wonderful day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye!